It's master switch on and talk to you on the headset.
Contact Mission Sierra.
All right, we have Sierra. A beautiful day out. No rain, not too much wind. Count your blessings, you know?
We're very fortunate this month and last month too.
Yeah, that's right. Plus we get to fly, so no complaints there. To the advanced power, oil pressure's on the green right rudder. Stay on that turn line. So good. Very worn off the ground. Oh. I get our flaps up, retrim the airplane, cruise climb about 80 knots.
So what got you into flight training from the beginning?
Well, so here's kind of my long story, and I know I talk a lot.
Or aviation in general.
Yeah, so my dad, growing up, my mom worked for a bank and marketing, and my dad worked for a car company, and I grew up taking cars apart and restoring them with my dad. And when I was really little, he used to take me out to Lambert, and we'd go watch planes land because his office was right over by the airport. And I was really young then, so I don't have a lot of memories of that. But when I was a kid, you know, I really loved aviation. It was one of the passions I had, and I got lucky enough that my dad had a friend when I was in the 3rd grade that had a 152 based out of Spirit, and his daughter is an airline pilot now. She took me up for a flight, and I loved it. It's, you know, the cliche, you do it once and you're hooked kind of thing, and yeah, it stuck with me. So when I was in high school, you know, I was never a top performing, you know, top of the line kid. I was pretty average. I didn't fail out, and I didn't like super high success in high school, just kind of get by, because I really didn't have any interest in taking classes I was bored with. So, yeah, versus when I started looking at colleges and what I wanted to do after high school, really what my plans were, I was ecstatic with the fact that it's like, oh, I can do something I really like. And I knew my interests were going to be one of two things, either computer science, because I absolutely loved doing that, and video games, that kind of stuff when I was in high school. I enjoyed it. But at the same time, I didn't really think I wanted to be with that community. I mean, I had friends that were in computer science and I loved it, but they don't get outside much, and I didn't want to be stuck in an office. You know? So when I was looking at schools, my parents kind of helped me looking around and gave me some ideas. We went down to Baylor in Texas, and they offered a liberal arts degree in aviation, which was kind of interesting. I wanted to go down to Texas because I got a lot of family from down there, and you know, my mom and I made a trip down to Waco and looked at the school, and it didn't seem like a fit. So then we went to Mizzou and looked at their computer science program, because that was the other thing I was looking at, and yeah, that wasn't a fit either. And then we went to University of Central Missouri out in Warrensburg, and Fred Sheezer, the guy we talked to, he had me sold on that program, and they had a lot of really good salesmen at the time that would talk you into doing the program. And you know, as much of work and everything I put into that program, and as much of a ride as it was, I'm so happy with the decision I made for school. So that's kind of where I got started. And going into it, I didn't really know what my aspirations were. I just knew I wanted to be a pilot. I wanted to fly airplanes, and I really didn't care what it was. You know, airlines had a big draw to me, but I didn't know enough about the other facets of aviation to really make that judgment. And I knew that at the time. There was more out there. I just didn't know what. So what kind of brought me to Spirit and also instructing, to kind of round up the story, was back in 2017. I graduated high school in 2016. I'm 25. Not to date myself too much, but I'm not that old. I've been instructing for 2 years now. But back in 2017, I was a freshman in college. It was the summer of my freshman year, going into sophomore year of college. And I drove up and down Edison, and I wrote down the name of every business there. And then I actually went to Lambert and drove all the way around the airport and wrote down the name of every business there. And I was still a student pilot at the time, and I really hadn't heard of an FBO before. And because I'm kind of a first-generation pilot in my family, so learning these terms, I had to do on my own. And I wrote down the names of those businesses on their websites. I turned in resumes, I did applications. I made a spreadsheet of every single one, how much they could pay, everyone I interviewed. And eventually, I found a job with JetLinks out at Lambert, and I was line service. And I started working in the private jet and charter jet business, moving them and cleaning them, really, late teens, early 20s, and I loved that. I did that for a couple months, and I would commute from Warrensburg back to here to work at Lambert and then go back there during the week for school. And that was a good job, but it didn't end up working out for me doing school full-time. So I went back to school, and then come 2018, summer of 2018, I moved back home and found a job at Aero Charter, which is right across the street from where Elite is. And I started doing line service there, and I was full-time there, and then I'd flight train on the weekends out in Warrensburg. And at Aero Charter, I got a lot of exposure to a little bit of everything. That's kind of a general aviation FBO. I learned so much with that job, and that's why I was saying earlier, if you've got aspirations in aviation, especially for my teenage students, I'll tell them, hey, you can get a decent paying job fueling aircraft, and you'll learn a lot and you'll make connections. Service is a wonderful route, and it teaches you a lot about the industry, and I've got something to say to that in a second. But that's kind of where I started realizing my goals and aspirations with my career ultimately are to work in charter or private jets. I would love to fly business aviation. I like the tight-knit community. And everybody I've met in that community is just the wonderful people. And I have aspirations to either fly over there eventually or somewhere else doing charter. That's what I want to do, that or private jets. What got me into instructing CFI, it's kind of a step in the process to becoming a professional pilot to gain flight time and experience, but also help other people out. And when I did my CFI training, I put a lot of work into that, more work than I'd put into anything else in my life. I mean, it was a lot of studying, a lot of time, a lot of effort. And then I took the check ride. This was December of 2020 that I got my CFI initial complete. And I was out in Warrensburg. I was still commuting out to here every weekend to work line service at Aero Charter, and then I'd drive the 3.5 hours back for flight training or to wait for someone to give me a call out in Kansas City for a job, being a CFI. And eventually I got that call from the chief of UCM's aviation department offering me a job, and that was one of the happiest days of my life. So I got that job. My first day on the job was a pretty stressful one. I worked out here the night before. I drove back that morning. I had a checkout flight in a Beechcraft Baron, which I'd never flown before. And then after that, I had my first 2 students ever, and both on me at the same time to be efficient with time. And for the first week or so, I really felt like I was drinking from a water hose of information. I mean, there's a lot that they don't teach you, and you can't teach. You just got to learn as being a flight instructor. And after I started working on it, and you start working with your students, I had a really good mentor out there named Ron Albertson, who did my CFI check ride, one of my favorite instructors I've ever had, and I really look up to him. And he said, Connor, I'm really territorial with my students. I want them to be safe. Well, if you're teaching, my scenario to teach for my CFI initial check ride was cross-country flight planning. So we talked about loss procedures. What do you do if your student gets lost? And that really spoke to me because he sees these people as like almost his kids. And I had kind of took that, and I started taking my student under my wing, and I saw a level of trust and respect. And when you see the face light up when they fly for the first time, or when they get something like they just did a stall, or they just landed by themselves, and you say, hey, look at my hands, that was all you. That's what it's all about. And just the trust, the friendships, the relationships, that's what's kept me around. And like I said, I got out of that job and went to Garmin, and I found a really good community there, and a lot of those people they're all pilots that work in that department. I loved the community there, but I wasn't flying. And you could tell I was kind of a bird out of the sky or a fish out of water. I wasn't happy. And I'll tell you, when I came out here and I started flying, when I did my first interview with Eric, just flying out here, it was like, oh my gosh, I was reborn. I found what I want to do. And I came out here, I started instructing, I've met so many good people, and that's kind of what got me into teaching, but has kept me around because I'm at about 1,300 hours now, and I only need 1,000 for my restricted AT. I have stayed over the time that most people usually do because I found a knack for it, and I love this job. I genuinely love this job. I'm flying. I'm getting paid to do it, first off, like that's wonderful. And at the same time, I'm helping other people meet their goals and do good things in their life. And you know, you spread that good charisma and that good safe everything to the community, and you feel good about it. I mean, it is a rewarding job, and one of my favorite parts of this job is, like today, I had a ride pass, just to quote my old instructor, seeing my little birdies fly off. The people that you spend time training, and you've been through so much, blood, sweat, tears, maybe not blood, but a lot of sweat, sometimes tears. It's a happy moment to see that all pay off, and I love instructing and just the community in general. But yeah, that's kind of where I came from doing this. That's what I'm about.
You fly a lot, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
For hours.
That's great. That's right. That's right. Yeah, I get a lot of flight time through the flight school here. And I'll rent every now and then just to do fun flights, but a lot of my flight time is dual given. I've got a lot of just instruction hours, and you know, I'll do cross country out every now and then. I've been lucky enough through this job to get to do engine break-in, so I'll fly an aircraft cross-country. A lot of instructors I've worked with at multiple places are there to get their hours and to move on to the airlines or wherever. And as long as they're a good instructor and they care about the people that they're teaching, they provide good service and adequate instruction, it's fine. I have no issue with that. You know, it is a step in the process, if you will. A lot of them want to fly jets. I really want to fly jets too. Don't get me wrong, because that's my end goal. That's where my career is meant to go, and that's where I'm eventually going to go. But I'll say this: I don't know if I'm flying a 172 or a Piper or Archer. It's got wings on it and an engine, and I'm up in the air. You know, there's nobody up here to bother me. I can go wherever I want as fast as I can. Planes are fast. It's kind of cool to get to travel and explore, and that's one great thing about, you know, having that mindset is it doesn't matter what I'm flying, and I love it. It's wonderful.
What are your ratings in the different types of planes that you like to fly?
So my current certificates, ratings, I've got my CFI, and I've got my instrument rating on that certificate. I've got a CFII. I have an aspiration to get my AGI or IGI soon for ground instructor or instrument ground instructor, because I've got enough check ride passes to apply for Gold Seal. So I'd like to get that taken care of here in the near future. I've got my multi-engine, commercial, high performance, and complex. I've flown, you know, all sorts of just general aviation, light airplanes. I don't have any type ratings yet, but I have aspirations to get one here, hopefully in the near future. You know, I'm starting to look at some of those places, but I'm not in any rush to get anywhere because, like I said, I have a knack for this and I'm comfortable flight instructing. And I feel like even if I was trying to get out of here, every day that I spend here, I'm not hurting anything. I'm getting flight time and I'm helping people get to their goal. So that's kind of where I'm sitting right now.
Well, you know how the Garmin works probably better than most people. I'm going to switch over to this one.
Okay.
If you'd give me a couple of pointers on what we're looking at here.
Yeah, sure. So some of the most common things that I see people not using properly or not taking advantage of, I would say the biggest for me is ground track. And it's not unknown, it's just people don't use it enough. This little magenta diamond you can see right here is showing the actual direction we're going over the ground. And I'll use that when I'm flying IFR especially to kind of help with course guidance, because that's telling me my track. You can still view your track in other areas of the system. It's just a really quick way to kind of snap to it, and you can see that. the system. Another thing I kind of showed you that not a lot of people are aware of is you can get visual reference points loaded into a flight plan. So if you see something on a VFR sectional or a TAC chart and you want to use that for like a VFR flight plan, you can put that on there. There's a lot of tools in this system to help you out, and if there's a way to do it on this screen, you can almost always guarantee you can do it over here on the PFD. And this system's all about mindset and just understanding the logic of how it's put together, because even now, with as much training and flight time as I've had with the G1000, I still learn something new every couple of flights about the system. What I usually will tell people is I try to use the PFD for execution and the MFD for programming, and I try to leave the flight plan page up. But the first thing I'll teach people when you start to use this system is the logic behind the FMS knob over here. Because what you got to understand is what you're actually doing when you're twisting these knobs. One of my pet peeves is people pressing buttons and not knowing what to expect is going to happen on the screen. Because you can get lost in this system pretty quick and you've got an airplane to fly. So you need to kind of understand the basic logic of how this is oriented or how the engineers thought about it when they designed it, so that you can try to help yourself find where you're trying to go. So what I teach people is it's organized like a book. When you grab this outer FMS knob here, you to your different chapters of that book. So we're on the map chapter, waypoint, auxiliary, flight plan, and then nearest. And then the little knob is going to change your page, which is down here and highlighted in blue. So I go to trip planning, utility, PS status. This page is really useful for IFR. System setup, you can go through basically any of these pages and kind of see what's going on with your system. But if you get buried in here, the last thing that I try to teach new people to the G1000 is this default map button. If you hold down clear here, it'll take you right back to the home page, to your map, and that's really useful for any sort of emergency or anything like that. And speaking about emergencies, or if you get lost, a Garmin trick that works on every Garmin device, if you grab your big knob on the FMS, the outer knob here, and go all the way to the right, that's going to take you to the nearest page. I bumped the little knob there, so it took me to nearest intersection. This will show you the nearest airport, and it gives you a list up here, the heading to go to it, and then your distance from that airport. This is really useful if you ever get disoriented or get lost in an area. And it's nice to have all this information up here for you. And another thing I think is kind of not used enough is the frequencies page, because if you're en route and you've got a flight plan set up, let's say you're going to a couple different airports, it's nice to set up this waypoint page so it shows all of your frequencies, because if you come down, let's say I wanted to load Spirit's clearance delivery, just as an example, and a COM2 up here, you just highlight it, and then if you press enter, it'll put it into that frequency box. So if you've got multiple airports, or if you're en route just trying to check the weather of a nearby airport or something like that, this is a really useful tool to you, so you don't have to rely on an iPad or an external portable device. It's built into the aircraft.
I think that's really really important. Not only are you have accurate and your presentation of your flight control, or your flight instruments on that side.
Right.
If you have an issue, like you said, you can find the nearest airport, the frequency at a touch of a button.
Exactly.
And you don't have to add that to your problems of potential emergency.
And that's why I say the foundation or the fundamentals of understanding that this is for programming, this is for execution is important. Now, you can still twist and turn and press buttons over here on this side, but what you just said is exactly why I teach it that way. If you're having a problem, or if you're in an urgent or an emergency situation, you want to be able to fly the airplane. All of your basic flight instruments are right here, and then you can spend time on this screen trying to figure out what's wrong with the rest of your problems. So yeah, it's important how you understand the system. And that was kind of drilled into my head at Central Missouri. They really taught us how to use this system for flying, and you should expect what's going to happen, or anticipate what's going to happen before you even press that button. And they were really big about that on the autopilot, and that was something for me as a student pilot that I kind of struggled to grasp, was when you press the AP button, what's going to show up at the top if you have the GFC 700? What's going to show up at the top, or even on the CAP 140, if you're going to turn autopilot on, what are you going to see before it turns on? Because this autopilot, it's as smart as you make it. It will do exactly exactly what you tell it to. If I told that to descend me into the ground, it doesn't have any sort of terrain awareness on it. It would just keep going. And I teach my students not to scare them or to be negative, but to make them cautious of it. And I consider defensive flying. You're watching out for yourself. It's just like watching for traffic or looking behind your shoulder in your blind spot when you're driving on the interstate to make sure you don't hit another car. You got to teach people that stuff so they can anticipate it, and they're not just pressing buttons on the autopilot and end up in a stall or something. And especially training an early on student pilot these things, or even someone early on as a private pilot, make them understand that it's going to prevent those kinds of mistakes from later down the road. And I feel like the earlier someone is in their flight training, the easier it is to start embedding those good aeronautical decision making practices with them. And there's reasons behind everything we do. Have you seen you can go back and play the last air traffic control transmissions? That's really nice as well. And it's those little things, those are what you learn over the 5 or 10 hours when you get comfortable with this system. But just knowing the basics and how to fly the airplane, climbs, turns, descent, straight level, all that stuff, it doesn't take a whole lot of time to transition into this. The hardest part is just learning where everything is.
It's good to have the opportunity to go between the two at a school of your size. You've got several G1000s, right?
Right, we do. And another advantage to scheduling G1000 is a lot of the time they're open. You've got better availability. Even though we've only got 2 currently, the steam gauge aircraft, they fill up really quick. That's kind of our bread and butter with training students is in the steam gauge aircraft. And kind of for the reasons I was saying earlier, it's easier to learn on that system first and the fundamentals and knowing where to find everything the old-fashioned way, looking at a chart supplement, AFD, or the actual VFR sectional chart and learning pilotage and dead reckoning. And one of my favorite things to do is pop the GPS off and say, okay, take me home. I love getting a student lost, so they think about that with me in the plane while they're by themselves, and they got to figure out how to find their way home. I try to teach that stuff with those aircraft, and it's easier with that because you can take information away on those a lot easier than hiding. I don't want to black out the screen because you still need to see your engine instrument, kind of stuff.
Because your brain is the mechanical backup.
That's right.
Or at least it should be throughout the flight.
100%. And that's the thing that I teach a lot of my instrument students is, yes, your autopilot is a wonderful tool to fly approaches and to fly en route. Take advantage of it. But you should be able to hand fly everything you're doing, because who's to say that autopilot's not going to fail or try to do something you don't want it to? And then sometimes you've got to disconnect the autopilot and take over because it's not cooperating. So having that skill early, especially learning it as a primary student, a student pilot, is advantageous to you. And that's why I love the fact that the ACS for private pilots still requires pilotage and dead reckoning. You've still got to navigate looking down and be able to calculate a ground speed. Can we still use the GPS? Oh yeah, it's a wonderful system, but it can fail. Things can go out, and if you get in an airplane that doesn't have a GPS or that kind of equipment, I want my student to be able to use a VOR or a map or even St. Louis approach. I had a student that I turned the GPS off one time. I completely blacked out his screen. I was hoping he was going to use the VOR to get home, and we were on flight following, and he did all of the radio communications. Like, really good student. And he's kind of a smart aleck. He just asked St. Louis approach for a vector to Spirit, and they got us home. Like, you know what? You're not wrong. And if I send you out to the practice area and you go out there and start practicing maneuvers and the visibility comes down or we get smoke, whatever happens, you can still get your home, and that made me happy. So those are some of the moments that are kind of rewarding. And you got to teach people how to be crafty like that and really use all the equipment on board and everything that's available to them. And those skills, like you're saying, the brain is the mechanical backup. If you only learn how to read a checklist and press certain buttons in here and say a script to air traffic control, you're not going to be a good pilot because things can change. And you could get traffic, you could get a failure, you could have something, an abnormal reading on an engine instrument. You've got to know how to troubleshoot that and how to handle a stressful situation and still fly the airplane. And that's my #1 piece of advice or thing that I teach students. Aviate, navigate, communicate. It's kept me alive.
departure from
Get off here for just a second, clear that runway, let's run our after landing checklist. Taxi on in. Enjoy it?
You couldn't have timed that any better. That was awesome.
I would say that was on purpose, but let's be honest, that was 100% luck, because I'm going to blame the landing on the sunset. The landing was okay. I side-loaded just a little bit. I could have put a little more aileron into it, and I could have flared a little bit more, but you got to critique yourself. That's how you do better, you know? Alrighty, sir, we are home. Welcome back. See ya.
Thank you, sir, for a great couple hours in the air.
Yeah,
watching that sunset come down was the best thing we could have.
Beautiful. You know, it distracted me from landing a little bit, but it still ended up being a wonderful flight. I'm glad we could have